Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of Get the Flick Out of Here, featuring me, Alex Pawlowski, and also Kate. Kate Elizabeth, how are you doing on this? It feels like I haven't slept in days.
Is it
Just
perhaps because you haven't slept in days?
I mean, I've slept, but not restful sleep.
Yeah.
And it feels like I've been, which is true, that I've been doing a podcast literally every day for a week or something. So yeah, no, hey, but it's a living. I mean, not really. I mean, they don't pay us that well, but it's fun. This is the show on the Know Your News Network where we talk about stupid, dumb, bad, and or weird movies and TV shows. I would say that of those descriptions, tonight's film only is described by one of those things.
It's weird.
Weird. It's a weird movie, but I certainly don't think it's dumb or stupid, and I don't think it's bad. It's weird.
It's only
weird.
I don't know if I like it or not. Weird. Like you like it,
which is totally fine. But even if you don't like it, do you think you don't like it because it's bad, or because it's just too weird?
I think there's elements of it that are bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think overall it's bad.
Okay.
I think it was overly ambitious,
That'll happen.
I will never fault. I will rarely fault being so artistic. You're taking an incredible risk. I will never say something like that should get the flick out of here, even if it's not for me. Mm-hmm. Like if it's because you are embracing creativity to a level that like I either A, don't understand, or B, falls out of my taste, I will never fault someone for that. Being too safe, I will crush you. I will tell you to get the flick out of here all the time.
I suppose we should say what the movie is. We are reviewing 2021's Pig.
Yes, we are.
Starring Nicolas Cage and available to stream on Hulu if you have the Hulu. I remember seeing the trailer for this, or a teaser or something. And I had no idea what it was. It just said Pig, trailer Pig, and I clicked on it. And it's nothing. It's just like a helicopter shot going over like pine forests, and then you just hear, then the screen goes black, and you just hear, "I'm looking for a truffle pig." And if you're a Nicolas Cage fanatic, as I happen to be, you can recognize his voice a mile away. So when I hear Nicolas Cage go, "I'm looking for a truffle pig," sold. I am sold. I don't care what the rest of the movie is. Give it to me. Give it to me right now. So yes. I don't even know how. He's living out in the middle of the woods. Well, I'm going to here's a little plot line. Spoilers, I guess, if you haven't seen Pig. He lives out in the middle of the woods in a shack, a literal shack, with a pig. It's like reddish brown. It's very furry. It's a pig, but it's like, I think some people think pig and they go pink. They're not pink. It's like it's a furry reddish brown pig.
Sure.
And it's a truffle pig, which I did not know was a I had heard of, but didn't know what it really was. They can sniff out very rare mushrooms that grow underground called truffles, and you can train a pig to do this. Pigs don't come out of their mother's womb. It's not like you can breed truffle pigs. Well, like some of them might be easier to train than others, but you still have to train them to do it.
Right.
And this pig finds truffles. And you can tell they go back to his shack after the pig finds a truffle, and he's lovingly slices it up with really good knives for a tiny shack in the middle of the woods.
Shack man. Yeah.
And like he's got like a little hot plate, but he's got all these spices and oils and awesome like pots and cutlery, and he makes a brilliant like fancy dinner for himself, and then he and the pig sit out on the porch and eat dinner. And very early on after that, we get a guy showing up, driving out, like looks like I don't know, like a Miata type, like a sportsy sports car.
Not something you would expect to see in
the woods,
pines, checking in on somebody who is a man in a shack.
And this guy comes out to Nicolas Cage's shack to buy truffles from him. And this is what Nicolas Cage's existence is. And not only does he buy the truffles, but he also comes with groceries to give Nicolas Cage. Like part of his payment, I guess, is in groceries, so he can still live.
And it would seem as though these truffles are not strictly for him. These truffles are wholesale.
It's some kind of a business being run. Yes. The guy's very young, fast talker.
Great actor.
Yeah.
Great actor.
I'm going to look that guy up because I had never seen him before, and I thought he was great.
I thought he was very good. I also have a thing with Nicolas Cage where I don't know his name in any of the movies he's in because he's just Nicolas Cage.
He's just Nicolas Cage.
And that's not a reflection of his acting. His performance in this was actually great.
Yes.
But he's Nicolas Cage.
Yes. The name of the actor is Alex Wolff.
He was very good.
With 2 F's. So convention dictates on any show that we are on that his name is now Alex Wolffa.
That is correct. If you come from our NXT review and you know who Braun Breaker is, you know we call him Braun Breaker Kirk because his name has 2 Ks unnecessarily. So now he'll be Alex Wolff.
If you have 2 consonants back to back, they must be pronounced. I don't care if they're silent. They're not to me.
That's the way of the world.
Alex Wolffa. So anyway, the next thing that happens is that there is a home invasion. There is a shack invasion of his little tiny shed in the woods, and somebody like knocks him out and steals the pig. And when he wakes up, you can tell he's very, very, very distraught by this. This is not just any pig. Like, he's very distraught by losing his pig.
It was at this point that I thought perhaps this pig had a historical document of some kind attached to him. And one must go on a treasure hunt of sorts for such a thing.
I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence.
That's it. The show's not going to get better than that. Sorry. This was a great episode. Thanks. Go watch it.
Leave them wanting more. 8 minutes and 42 seconds into the show, we're done.
That's it. It's not going to get better than Declaration of Independence.
Okay. So he gets in his old truck that he's obviously haven't driven in forever. And he tries to drive it, but it can't drive. It's not going to work. Like, it just doesn't run anymore. So he walks out of the woods to seems like a major road, but not like a 4-lane highway, just like, a road. It's paved and everything. And he walks for a long time, and he comes to a diner. And he walks in and he asks for some lady's name. And they go, "She died 5 years ago." "Oh, can I use your phone?" So he's been in the woods for 5 years. Or at least it's been 5 years since he's been to this diner.
Yeah. And it seems like without human contact other than
the dude who buys his truffles.
Businessman, yeah.
Other than Alex Wolffa.
Alex Wolffa.
So he calls Alex Wolffa, who comes to pick him up. and they go to this other woman who is another truffle wholesaler. And this is where it starts to get really weird because so many things are not explained in this movie. Because, and I actually kind of enjoy this, because for the people involved in the action, the characters wouldn't need any unnecessary exposition. Both Alex Wolfova and Nicolas Cage know who this woman is, who runs a kind of farmer's market for only truffles out in the middle of the woods. That's basically what she does. But we're never really introduced to who she is or what she's doing or why. But he comes to her and says, somebody stole my truffle pig. And she immediately knows who it was.
It loses her mind about it, kind
and
of.
So angry about it.
And nobody messes with.
Yeah, nobody
Wixie,
messes
I think,
with whatever her name was. Oh, all cast and crew. Let's see. You're going to tell me who this is. No, that's not right. That was the thing. I don't remember what her name was. But I really, really liked her little character, and I was like, oh, cool, a new character for this. Nope, she's in one scene. Goodbye, old lady who runs a farmer's market for only truffles in the middle of the woods. But then again, her purpose was fulfilled after this. She takes Nicolas Cage and Alex Wolfova out to a trailer in another part of the forest. And there are these two meth heads who live there.
One who looks like Kristen Wiig, but wasn't Kristen Wiig, but I thought it was Kristen Wiig, but it wasn't not Kristen
Wiig. So they almost immediately admit to having stolen the pig, but then they also say they sold it to a guy in a suit.
Yes.
And I was like, so
really cracked under the pressure, but they're also meth heads, so maybe like they weren't.
And it was like they weren't. The only thing that they were mostly afraid of is disappointing old lady who runs a farmer's market for only truffles. Like they was like, I'm sorry, mom, but it wasn't their mom. I don't think it was.
Right.
But it was just like this weird thing. They felt really bad for having done it.
Because she says something to the effect of, like, basically, I just ask respect from the people I do business with.
Yes.
And it was like they had betrayed that. So it was actually a pretty good scene.
Yeah. And so they somebody who's a suit, and obviously somebody who'd put him up to it. Otherwise, I don't know where they would have found somebody with a suit. And also the idea of like, we've got this pig we stole. Hey, guy in a suit, you want to buy a pig? Now, the guy in the suit like paid them to go steal the pig.
Right.
So, it now becomes a literal odyssey. It is almost a Greek odyssey, which is Nicolas Cage and Alex Wolfova in Alex Wolfova's yellow sports car driving into Portland, Oregon. Now, I grew up in a very tiny town about a half hour west of Eugene, Oregon, which is 2 hours and change south of Portland. I've been to Portland many times. Portland, since I have actually lived in that vicinity, has gotten way, way, way more weird. But I know people who live there. My brother lived there for a long time. And I guarantee you what is about to happen when we describe the rest of this movie to you will seem far-fetched. But if you live in Portland, you'd be like, yeah, seems about right.
Story checks out.
Yeah. Seems legit. Yeah, absolutely. So they're just trying to find the guy in the suit. Who would steal this pig? Obviously, it's somebody who wants truffles, who sells the truffles, right? So Alex Wolfova has all these contacts at restaurants. That's what he does. He buys the truffles from Nicolas Cage and other people, and he sells them to restaurants who use the truffles in very fancy dishes and charge a lot of money for it. So he goes to one of his guys and he says, if it's anybody, it's this dude. I think I'm remembering the order of this correctly.
Yes. Yep.
And they go to this guy's restaurant. Oh no. Before that, right? No.
Yeah, Fight Club scene 1 comes before that.
Fight Club scene 1. Oh, they go to find this guy in the back of some bar who looks like a knockoff Paul Giamatti.
Kind of is.
Knockoff Paul Giamatti, whose name is Edgar. That much I did remember. Is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have this pig, whatever. And then Nicolas Cage doesn't accept that. So he goes to a different bar, an old hotel, and he explains all of these hotels are built on other older things. So there's always tunnels underneath all of these places because everything burned down 100 years ago, but we built it on top of it.
One thing that I really liked about Alex Wolffa was he did not just buy into this journey at first. Yes. Like, he was like, I'm not driving your ass to the city. And then when it got to this point of the movie, he literally, like, several times was like, I'm not in the loop. Fuck this. Fuck you. I'm fucking out of here. Like, he said the F word like 8 times. And I was like, that rules, because that's how I would actually react in this situation. Like, yes. I did you a favor because you're my friend. And now it's getting weird. And I am out of here. This whole thing feels incredibly sketchy. And he was right. It is incredibly sketchy. Yes. But then Nicolas Cage gives the backstory, which I appreciated how organically they worked in him giving the backstory of this into the conversation, because that felt very real, which was nice. It wasn't like, and here's where I explain to you what's going on. Like, it felt very Sorkin to me, where it's like sometimes he especially on The West Wing, it's just like my favorite show ever, would just fill in the gaps in dialogue with the characters really, really naturally, and this gave me that feel. I appreciated that about the scene.
Yeah. Anyway, they take the.
It's so weird.
It's so weird, but it is so true. Like, the Pacific Northwest was a hotbed of human trafficking in the late 1800s. And yeah, it was, people were sold into slavery all over the place in the Pacific Northwest. It was not a good place to live. The very worst people settled, like, it's just weird to think, because they now have this very reputation of being a very hippie, granola, crunchy hipster type of place.
Craft beer.
Oregon was founded as a white supremacist state. Literally for years and years on the books, Black people were not allowed to move to the state of Oregon. Like, it was just like if you could enforce a law that says if you're Black, you're not allowed to move here. They had some really, really fucked up things that were going on in that state. So there's a whole sequence of tunnels where people would be like literally snatched off the street down into the tunnels, put on a boat underground out to the Columbia River and down to the Pacific Ocean, where there was a boat ready to buy the people that had been kidnapped off the street and then taken across the Pacific to be sold into slavery in China. That was a thing that happened for realsies 130 years ago. Probably much more recently than that. But so anyway, there's all these tunnels underground all over Portland. And Nicolas Cage explains this because, understandably, when they move a big shelf out of the way of a wall and there's a false wall and a door there, Alex Wolffa is like, holy shit, what the hell is going on? What crazy Narnia are you taking me to? And Nicolas Cage explains what this all is about. But they get to the bottom of this tunnel, and there's a big open room where Edgar is running a fight club. And it's all a bunch of waiters from the fancy restaurants above, and some people who are like taking in the sights of this fight club, betting on it. And Nicolas Cage offers himself up as tribute for this thing. Like, he doesn't even fight, but he just like says, "Who wants to beat me up?" And
here's where I have a problem.
Okay.
It's a real big leap too. An earlier but justified scene of it would take me a really long time to train another pig to do this. It would take a whole other season, he says. I am willing to sacrifice it myself as tribute in this underground fight club instead of train another pig.
Right. Well, this is the thing about it, is that we learn later that's not actually why.
Yeah. But at this moment, I was like, this is a
why
giant
do you care about this pig so much is a thing, because it's not that. But anyway, I should say earlier in the movie, he plays a cassette tape that
right at the beginning,
right at the beginning, that is obviously like
it's a woman's
voice, like dedicated to him, like it was something she wrote a song for him for his birthday or something. It's probably a wife, a dead lover, whatever, but you get the sense of like that's all he has left of her. And it's a very moving, and it's also just, it's such a wonderful, it feels true and also way over the top weird at the same time. Like it's so hipstery and Portlandia of, all I have left of my dead wife is this cassette tape, and I'll put it into this. Oh, because that's one of the things. One of the things that Alex Wolfova brings is D batteries to put in the boombox because there's no electricity out there. And so the first thing he does is put the D batteries in there and listens to part of the tape and then turns it off because it's too hard for him to listen to.
So this is what, like with that, it was odd because the act of it was very sweet. But it's, if you're a wrestling fan, he looks like Luke Harper. Like like not Brody Lee, like Luke Harper.
Yeah.
In a shack playing this tape player to himself.
Yeah.
So it's like a juxtaposition of a very sincere and genuine scene, but in this, and I was like, if this is a horror movie, and I told the son of a bitch I can't do horror movies. It wasn't. Spoiler. But it had that feeling, like that abandoned shack. There's just like this guy who hasn't taken a shower in 6 years, playing this cassette of a woman's voice, but it's a very personal message that's on there.
Yeah. One thing Alex Wolfova says, hey, I could bring in one of those camp showers. It just works like hook up like to like a fire or whatever, and then you could do it that way, and you wouldn't smell so bad every time I come out here.
For as weird of a movie as this was, and we'll cut back to Fight Club, a lot of the weirdness was justified. I was very impressed by that. Yeah. Very, very impressed, especially in the relationship between the two of them, because you're kind of like, wouldn't Alex Wolfova, at this point in the movie, wouldn't you assume that this guy would just go find another friend for his supplier or whatever, or have this guy committed to a mental institution if he does care about him? But I felt like it's a very weird movie, but a lot of it was justified, which made it easy to buy into.
Yeah. Anyway.
Back at Fight Club.
He writes his name up on a wall, like who he is, and everyone immediately wants to be the person to beat the hell out of him. And it's this tiny little waiter in a rose-colored satin vest and a bow tie, who beats the ever-loving piss out of Nicolas Cage. And it is a cathartic moment for this little tiny waiter who never has any lines of dialogue.
No, and it's timed.
Yes.
And he kind of goes past the time. Like the whole movie's very artistically shot. It's really, really, from an aesthetic perspective, very good. But you see like the time ticking by. You see Alex Wolfova being like, is this going to end, or am I going to watch this guy die in my day that started by a shack trying to get my truffles? I'm now going to watch my supplier / friend die. And you see the clock strike the amount of time, and then you see this guy get a couple more shots in, and they pull him off But when you said catharsis, like, that's what it was. You could see this guy was just unleashing all of the anger he ever had in his life in this moment.
So I guess by doing that, what was the point of that? Did he get Edgar to tell him some information or something? Like, what was the end game of that scene? I forget. She saw it like today or yesterday. I watched it a month ago.
I saw it yesterday, and I'm having trouble grasping the details. But he gets a piece of paper with the name on it of where he should go to get his pig, basically. But even that, I was like, did he have to get the hell beaten out of him for that? That feels like a disconnect.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite scenes, not just in this movie, but in like a lot of recent movies that I've recently seen, because it was so odd, but also felt so true, was the scene where he, having had his head nearly caved in by a tiny waiter, and so he's got it covered in dried blood, and he and Alex Wolfova go to the fanciest little bistro you've ever seen for brunch the next morning. And everyone is looking like, oh, that was the thing. The whole scene starts with this waitress who describes the thing that they're serving. And one of the things they do is they literally set a pine cone on fire and blow the smoke through a tube into a dome that oversets the little duck egg or whatever. It's the most fancy foo-foo ridiculous shit. And I guarantee you, it is like the third most fanciful, ridiculous foo-foo shit that they serve in Portland. Like, it's like ridiculous.
And he's like beaten and bloodied.
Yeah.
He also had a mark on his face from when they came in to steal the pig. They knocked him out.
Yeah.
So he was like just getting progressively more, and the makeup and stuff around it was really good. It was like he looked very swollen. He looked like a guy after a UFC fight.
But he like takes a swig of the wine or whatever. So this is very good. I like to speak with the head chef. I'm like, okay, so, certainly, sir. Certainly, bloodied hobo. You may speak with our head chef.
In my fancy-ass restaurant.
And the best part is Alex Wolfova being like, man, I don't want to be here. Like, he's just so...
He's really good at it.
He's really good at playing this part. Good. And
it's
then...
It's very real. Like, you don't want to be in that situation at all.
The head chef comes out. And he is the most nervous man in the world.
History of nerves.
And it's like it is so obvious he does not belong here. And it's so interesting because he's running the most successful little bistro that serves duck eggs covered in smoke in the history of little bistros that serve duck eggs covered in smoke. But he doesn't belong here.
No, it's like he accidentally was successful.
Right. And the best part about it is, like, you get that feeling from watching him, but you wouldn't be able to put the words to it until Nicolas Cage puts the words to it to his face. Because Alex Wolfova says, "Don't you recognize him?" And this is where we start to get an idea of who the hell Nicolas Cage is. Because I guess the guy's name is Chef Derek or whatever. Nervous guy says, "Oh my God, Chef. How are you? It's good to see you. We've seen you in 15 years. And you get the sense that, like, this guy was like the chef in all of Portland. Like, no, if you wanted the fanciest restaurant, this guy was the head chef there, 5 stars, whatever. And so he's a god in the culinary circle of the Pacific Northwest. But nobody's seen him in 15 years. Everyone thought he was dead. And immediately Nicolas Cage starts running this guy down like, I know you. You used to work for me. I fired you because you sucked at this one thing. But you always said that you wanted to start a sports bar or something. A barbecue joint or served wings or whatever. Why are you doing this? And the guy, all he can do is smile and shake his head. Like, I don't understand why you're asking me this. Of course, this is the best thing I would ever do. Of course, I'm so happy doing this. And you can tell he's not. And eventually, like, Nicolas Cage just runs him down until he just starts crying about everything.
So good.
It's a really great scene, really well acted by this theater actor from, like, the Pacific Northwest. Like, this guy who plays the nervous dude. Never seen him anything else. I had to look him up because I was like, where else can I find this guy? You can't. It turns out he's just a really great actor who doesn't do anything else because they don't have really a film and television scene there. But he does theater all over the place, and he's great. Anyway, he basically convinces this guy to shut down this bistro and go do the actual restaurant he wanted to do because he would be happier. But also gets him to give up the information about who has his pig. Like, you don't want to talk to him. You can't see that. You can't talk to that man. And they make him out to be the devil.
Yes.
Like, basically the way that they describe the dude who has his pig is just the worst human being in the world. And I don't know, like, if any of this sounds really, really good to you, and like you're a fan of Nicolas Cage, his works, or artsy types of films or stuff like this, I would say this is a good moment to turn this off. And if you have not seen it, go watch it. Because from here on out, the spoilers are going to be pretty hard and fast and loose.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't want to know the spoilers, then go and watch the movie and come back. If you don't give a shit, or have you seen the movie already,
stick around.
Here you go. At this point, I believe we are introduced to the information that the guy who probably has Nicolas Cage's pig is Alex Wolfowitz' father.
Yes.
And there's a really great scene that Alex Wolfowitz has with Nicolas Cage over like French toast that he makes for him in his own apartment.
His like very fancy, very well-to-do,
very tiny ass, but very fancy apartment.
This guy is a lone wolf a little bit, but very successful. Like you definitely get the vibe.
But there's this. God, it's such a great scene. It's one of my. This has a couple of really, really great scenes that are very moving. But in this scene, Alex Wolfowitz like says this whole thing of like, my parents went out to eat at your restaurant, and they came back and they were the happiest I'd ever seen them. I couldn't stop talking about the meal they had. They like ran down every last thing that was there. And that was the happiest he'd ever seen them. And it turns out that later his mother committed suicide. And just the way it's all comes out is it's just a really well written and impeccably acted scene. And then, Nicolas Cage, has this awesome doomsday monologue that is something that I truly believe. This is why I keep trying to tell my parents to move out of where they live, because he talks about, there's a specific name for it. There's a phenomenon scientifically of it, but there is going to be an earthquake off the coast of the Pacific Northwest that will basically turn the whole thing into an ocean. Because it's just the two tectonic plates, one's going to slide underneath the other one. The tidal wave is going to just wipe everything off the face of the map within up to like 200 miles inland. Like, it's going to be the worst thing we've ever seen, because tidal waves that happen way out in the middle, start way out in the middle of the Pacific. By the time they get to the U.S. coast, it's not really that bad.
And
Hawaii could be screwed.
You have a warning shot usually too.
The phenomenon, they did a really amazing article about this a while ago that I read and forwarded to my parents and was like, I never want to hear that you guys are going to the coast for the day, because if you happen to be there on the day this happens, you're dead. There's nothing else, whatever. Also, if you happen to be in your home where you live right now, you won't die in the flood, but all communications will be severed and I will never know what happens. It's just like nobody will be able to get to you. It's just like, it's a horrible thing. So he describes in very artful detail, like using metaphors and imagery about what this is going to be when this happens. this building will not stand when this whole thing happens. Everything's going to sink into the sea. Seattle's gone, all this kind of stuff. And the way he says it is just so matter of fact. And like, this is the truth. We're all just waiting to die. Because basically what he says, like, it's terrible. Like, the idea being your mother committed suicide. She just got out early because we're all dead. But after he does this monologue, he says, you should really use stale bread when you make French toast, because that way the eggs don't get absorbed too much. And that's the end of the monologue, because he tells him how to make French toast better. It's great.
It's so great. And in Alex Wolff in this scene too, even the way he's talking about, and it's like alarmingly relatable sometimes. The way he was talking about his mother's suicide was also very mechanical. Like, it wasn't like Nicolas Cage was minimizing it. It was like, if you have dealt with a trauma sometimes, and you've gone to therapy about it, and you've talked about it like ad nauseum, it kind of just, not to minimize the emotional weight of it, but like you can just say it, and it doesn't bring out pain every time you bring it up, like in a vocal way or whatever. Like, it's just like, it's like, I had French toast this morning and my mother committed suicide, and you say it like all kind of in the same tone, in the same breath. To me, this felt very much like that. And then he was like, but my dad's good. I loved him. He says like, he's locked in, he's not going anywhere or something. Yeah. And it says like, people like that are okay. Like, people that are successful like that are okay. He's not going anywhere. And I just loved the whole conversation. Was so well acted, but kind of very mechanical on both ends. And you were like, oh, I understand why these guys have like this business friendship. Like, there is a commonality there where they both operate in the same way. I loved the scene. Yeah, I loved it.
And then they go to visit this guy's dad, who's played by Adam Arkin, who I really wish would do more movies.
Unbelievable.
He's a really, really great actor. And he is distant as fuck. Like, he is just so above it all and beyond it all. And just, yeah, it was, and he, anyway, Nicolas Cage confronts him like, you have my pig. I want my pig. And he's like, what are you talking about? Even though I did have your pig, it's blah, 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 blah. But he's just so above it. Like, my advice to you is to go and get another pig. Like, basically. But he's just such an asshole about everything. Nicolas Cage, I forget the exact words of like, were you always like this, or is it just since she died? And like, just the way he says it, and the way Adam Arkin stops when Nicolas Cage says it. And doesn't he basically say to Nicolas Cage the same thing? Like, were you always like this, or is it just since she died? Because like,
basically, yeah. Like, what I loved about this was like, at first it just kind of felt like Alex Wolff was the linchpin, but now you're like, oh, these guys know a little bit about each other. Like, and part of it's a mirror. Like, they are both screwed up because of the passing of a woman. And very, in some ways similar, in some ways different. Like, the callousness is similar, and then the directions that they went are very different. But a fantastic scene. Arkin is so good in everything he's in. And this, he simply could not be bothered by any of this. Like, it was so beneath him from a time perspective. He was just in a not urgent way in a rush to not deal with this. Like, it was so, like that guy who always says he's busy and he's not busy. It was like that a little bit. Just perfectly done.
And anyway, just the idea, like, and this is basically, like, I don't think they ever actually say it, but Nicolas Cage, Chef Rob, whatever his last name was the culinary master of the Pacific Northwest, and then his wife died. and he just removed himself entirely from society, and no one's seen for 15 years. Like, that was the catalyst for it. We move on. But I don't remember if they ever said, did they ever say how she died? How his wife died?
Think so. I don't.
It feels sudden, but I don't think it. I don't. If it had been suicide as well, they probably would have called it out. So it might have been. I don't know. But whatever it was,
didn't feel like a disease. Didn't feel like suicide.
Right. I also like that they didn't tell us, because it wasn't. It's not a necessary piece of information. It would have been a little bit of window dressing, and it might have been nice to know, but we didn't need to know. And I don't feel like Nicolas Cage would have gone into a big deal about it. But anyway, they leave it at that. And basically, there's this awesome one too of like Nicolas Cage goes to the house that he lived in with his wife, and other people live in it now. And there's a little boy on the back porch, and Nicolas Cage walks around the outside of the thing, and he and this little boy have this really sweet conversation. And I just kept waiting for like a parent to like look out the back door and be like, Han, why are you talking to that hobo?
Lumbering homeless man. Yeah.
But it was really sweet, and it wasn't about anything besides like, we used to live here, and the little boy was very sweet in it. It was a little scene, but
it was very tender. It was really, yeah.
But anyway, he and Alex Wolfova, Alex Wolfova really apologizes for his dad being an asshole about everything. But Nicolas Cage apparently won't take no for an answer. And the way he's going to get Adam Arkin to give him back the pig is to cook a very special meal. And there's he has to go to certain spots to get the stuff for it. And he sends Alex Wolfova to a cemetery, and sees the place where where his Nicholas' wife's remains were buried or put in a mausoleum. And then also this woman has Nicolas Cage's old collection of rare wines, and she was bequeathed to her. And so she's like, here's the bottle that he wants, and blah, blah, blah. This movie is full of really interesting characters who might have their own movie, kind of like this movie that's very weird and a character study, but they only appear in one scene. There's an extended MCU kind of universe thing where everybody gets their own movie, and this is like the Avengers movie where they all come together. But then he goes to this woman, and I honestly thought it was his daughter for a while. This woman who runs a bakery. And she had this really tender scene with her about, because she hadn't seen him in forever. And she says, I turned it into a bakery. And I'm wondering if this was where the restaurant had been.
That's what I thought too. Because he's going to get an old meal together.
Right. But she said, you still make, the baguette that you made or whatever the one it was. She says, of course I do. And so she wraps it up and gives it to him. And they have this nice little scene, but then he has to go and make this meal. But he basically goes back to Adam Arkin's house. Adam Arkin just lives in his study. He's the guy who just lives behind his incredible appointed oak desk and just, writing things in some book. And so he has no idea that below him in the kitchen, one of the most famous chefs ever in the Pacific Northwest is making this perfect meal. And then after it's done being made, Alex Wolfova walks up the steps and kind of knocks on his frosted glass door. There's that, hey, Dad, we made you dinner. And I don't have time for this. Dad, we made you dinner. Please come downstairs. And so they have this fancy dinner, which is plated and served and totally like Nicolas Cage. And Adam Arkin takes 2 bites and realizes that this is the meal they had when they were the happiest they'd ever been, and just starts weeping. Just and has to like excuse himself from the room. And then Nicolas Cage follows him, and immediately Adam Arkin is like, your pig's dead. It's like, I'm sorry, the meth heads killed your pig, and I'm really sorry, but I can't give you your pig back. It is as though you just told Nicolas Cage again for the first time that his wife died.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always thought while watching the movie was that the pig was basically like a dog that he had for 10 years. Like, and people who like Buster, like the idea like your own personal dog,
off and I'm still obsessed with them. Yeah,
exactly. Like it's a thing. Like everybody who has a pet. Like I had a cat for 12 years, and the cat got old and very sick, and I had to put him down, and it was very sad. And I understand that pain of losing, but it was not just like I lost my best friend and my pet. It was though like his world had collapsed in on itself. That was his reaction to being told that the pig was dead. It was a very, very emotionally like heart-wrenching scene to watch Nicolas Cage react in that way. And also Adam Arkin, like knowing he had to tell him that the pig was dead and it was a horrible accident, and I would totally give you your pig back if I had your pig. I'm really sorry. Like both of them in that weird state of mind was just, man, it was really hard to watch.
I think I said last time that my favorite episode of television before we discovered Ancient Aliens was an episode of The West Wing called In Excelsis Deo, and it's Adam Arkin, and it's Bradley Whitford.
Yep.
And Adam Arkin is trying to pull the trauma out of Bradley Whitford for him to realize what he's done to himself. And I was like, this is so funny because it's kind of a reversal of how Bradley Whitford acted where Bradley Whitford is like emotionless until he puts two and two together. And then just kind of lets it fly. And I was like, this is so funny because Adam Arkin is like emotionless, and then he takes a couple bites of the meal and is just a mess after that. Like, so, and I've been in that position. I've seen people in that position of just being so emotionally locked up until you're not. And then once you open that can of worms, the worms come absolutely flying out. We don't really get in this scene a justification for why he was going after that pig in the first place was my only thing. Not here.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like it was pointed, like to specifically screw over Nicolas Cage, but also particularly to screw over his son.
It felt more like his son to me because like this guy just seems like he was living in a shack for 5 years, you know?
Right. But I mean, like if he has a history with Chef Rob, you know, like that it might be kind of like, you know, an old grudge. But this guy, I does not feel like this guy could be viewed as the devil by everybody in the culinary scene of Portland, and B, have everything that he has just by being the #1 wholesaler of truffles in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
There's got to be more to his businesses than that. I'm sure there is, but we don't get any other window into what that might be. But like Alex Wolfova talking about his father and him like splitting up the trade in the area, and how it's like I don't step on his clients and he doesn't get involved in mine. Well, mostly, and it's kind of like this thing of like the dad can take whatever he wants, and I feel like the dad is wanting to, like, you know, you're getting too successful, and because I hate everything, I'm going to destroy you, my son. Kind of a thing of like, you know, like if you don't have your best producer of truffles, then you will just done. Also, this is a really good truffle pig. who finds all this stuff. There's a really awesome moment where like Nicolas Cage says, "You don't need a pig to find truffles. You can just learn. After a while, you learn to figure out where truffles would grow, and then you look for them there." You know, like it's like because it would make sense. You know, if like truffles grow
in
here,
specific conditions, yeah,
specific conditions where it's shady, facing the north or whatever, like that kind of stuff.
in this type of soil or whatever, yeah, like.
And so, but anyway, it's I would say the thing it's hard to say because I think the scene was tremendous, but I think the thing I liked the least about the movie was that he doesn't get reunited with his pig. Like
it kind of sucks.
I wanted a happy ending. I mean, as happy of an ending as it can be. And
so much of the movie is like, I mean, we see him being depressed in a shack alone. We see him getting his shit kicked in, which felt very out of the way to when we got to this point. I was like, the Fight Club thing felt out of the way of this.
Yeah. Yes, it did. It felt like the filmmaker, the director had made a short film about a weird underground fight club,
yes.
and
like,
decided he had to like fold it in to his bigger picture. I don't know why, but yeah, I did not feel like it was part of it. But like after this, he just ends up going back to his old shack in the woods, but with no pig. And he just sits there and he listens to his dead wife's birthday song for him. It's I'm on Fire by Bruce Springsteen is what she sings to him. And it's her voice is haunting. You can tell she's not like properly trained, but it's still beautiful. And it's just it's really, really affecting to watch him with literally having now nothing in his life to remember having everything like in that moment. Nicolas Cage, I think, is one of our greatest living actors because like he can take something as ridiculous as this, like hobo who lives in the woods, had a pig stolen, used to be a great chef,
5-star chef, yeah,
goes on an odyssey to get his pig back, but his pig is already dead. I don't know what are the clues in the script for how to play this character, and yet the whole way through it feels absolutely authentic. And like, you know, you can go back through his entire career, and there's always does stuff like as crazy as his like performances are. I always feel like no, he's crazy in this role because the character is crazy. He finds those roles, but like, and every one of us is crazy at least a little bit of the time.
I think most people, it's more his film selections than his actual performances in it.
He's been in some stinkers recently. This was not a stinker. It was very artistic and maybe even overreaching a bit. There was like if one of the actors is bad, this whole thing falls apart, was how I felt about it. Like if the nervous waiter is bad, it falls apart. If Adam Arkin sucks, it falls apart. If any one character is bad, this whole thing, I think, unravels. And it just kind of goes some places it doesn't need to go, I feel like. Yeah. I'll agree with that.
And I get it, but I also feel like, you know, we went on this journey ultimately for nothing. Like for him to be down a friend, which is like sad in some ways realistic, but like there wasn't really like a satisfying payoff.
No, I think a lot of it is that like, well, it's his monologue about how we're all gonna die
Yeah.
eventually.
Yes. Which isn't like a particularly happy.
But I think that the overall philosophy of the movie is that that life is kind of terrible. Which, I mean, if you're not in the mood to watch a movie like that, I feel you. But it certainly made me think when I watched it. I'm like, I didn't know what the movie was going to be, and I certainly didn't think it was going to be this profound. You know what I honestly, what I thought it might be, because again, I'd only watched that original trailer, and they didn't really give you much of a detail of it. I thought it was going to be like an art house version of like Taken with Liam Neeson, but with a pig.
It kind of was.
Like I mean, he kind of was. He didn't kill anybody, but yeah, it's.
That's why we had the Fight Club scene. You needed a physical amalgamation of him getting his shit kicked in, so it wasn't emotional and mental the whole time.
You're right.
Yeah, I guess it was mostly like an hour and a half of a guy being sad. Like at the end of the day, it was like very artistic, extremely well acted, interesting story for the most part.
Yeah.
To me, the acting in this was paramount. Like I felt like every single person selected was really, really good in this.
Yeah. So yeah, the thing about it that I love about him is that sometimes he will pick just the biggest clunkers imaginable to pay off his debts, and sometimes he will say, because he must get hundreds of scripts across his debts every week, because people know there's a chance Nicolas Cage might do my weird B movie. And this is one that was like an art house type of thing. But also, this is one that I might have to make you watch at some point, because I really want to watch it. And if I watch it, I want to get paid for it. So I'll do the thing. It's called Jiu-Jitsu, but it is absolutely not about Jiu-Jitsu. So
I'll say this for this. This was largely about a pig.
Yeah. It says every 6 years, an ancient order of jiu-jitsu fighters joins forces to battle a vicious race of alien invaders. This is basically Mortal Kombat against aliens with Nicolas Cage in it. Are you sure
this is in our NXT review? This sounds like an NXT review.
But when a celebrated war hero goes down in defeat, the fate of the planet and mankind hangs in the balance.
Immediately no. Oh, darn. You're going to have a guest sit in on that episode. Another Nicolas Cage mark, and you guys could be weird together. No.
Yeah, okay, great.
Because if Nicolas Cage is not in that movie, you have no interest in that movie.
No, it's so true. Yeah. So true. 100%. Yeah, but I want to see Nicolas Cage play an ancient jiu-jitsu fighter who fights aliens. Of course I want to see that. How could anybody not want to see that?
Making the courtship look pristine. Chose the wrong guy in the end.
Yeah, I guess. Hey, let's give an update on the courtship.
Courtship update.
Courtship update from you, Kate.
If you want Temptation Island ones, I can give you those too, but we'll stick with the courtship for now. Because they both had their finales. She chose Danny B, who was just like this boring real estate agent with a really thick New York accent who was about as charismatic as piece of paper. I did not enjoy him. She had handsome wrestling coach who, easy on the eyes, that fella, and was very sweet and like a little introverted. I really liked him. And then your guy, the one guy you really liked, Christian, who was like very everyman and turned out to be gender fluid, and we loved him. And out of those three, she chose Danny B, who's like pretty meh and not even that cute.
I love it. As soon as I Google chip Danny B, here's the first thing that comes up. Hold on. Come on. Go back to the thing I said. It says pork chip fans are mad at Miss Remy for choosing the wrong guy. This is not just you. That's what I love about it.
I am those.
Yeah, that is me. That is me. The courtship fans slam Nicole Remy for choosing Danny B.
He was 3 out of the last 3. Like,
too bad.
And like 1, 2, huge gap. 3. Danny B. Doing nothing.
Yeah. Bah.
So.
Ancient Aliens update. I wanted to know what they thought about the founding fathers. I wanted to know what they thought about the founding fathers.
Go on.
It was a really lackluster episode. Like,
oh,
I wanted it to be like they thought George Washington was an alien, but no, they're just like the Freemasons probably like they read old texts, and so the old texts were all about the Greek gods, and the Greek gods were all obviously aliens. So therefore, they read about aliens, and that's why.
Oh, the U.S. is alien inspired.
That's they like they said the full thing starts with a bunch of people in 1952 flying over Washington, D.C., saw flying saucers. And then it said, could it be that these same visitors were watching over us at the beginning of our country? Like, that's the initial leap. And I'm like, come on.
You lost me. You lost me from the top.
There was one of like that during Valley Forge, where the U.S. Army was at its lowest point. Nobody had shoes. They were getting their feet falling off from frostbite. There was no way they were going to win, and then eventually they did. Right? Well, how did they go from the absolute rock bottom to winning and defeating the British?
I know.
Oh, how was it?
Aliens.
Yeah. George Washington apparently went out into the woods to have a think. And there he was visited by aliens.
Who provided him supplies?
And the aliens told him everything that was going to happen in the future of this war, and indeed
psychic aliens,
and indeed all of American history.
Oh, that's neat.
Like, they showed him a map of America, and indeed, and remember, at this time, not all of America was mapped out, at least not in a way that George Washington would know that it was. And they showed him a map that that there's no way he could have known this at the time, but had all of the major cities of all over America marked on the map. And because there's no way that George Washington could have known about it, how do we know about it, that this is a thing that actually happened? Well, as it turns out, George Washington had an aide who was with him at the time of this encounter. No. And that aide lived until almost the year, until 18 something, like far in the middle of the 19th century. And on his deathbed, he recounted how George Washington was visited by an alien, and he was there. And George Washington swore him to silence, and he couldn't keep it inside because he knew nobody else would know. So he had to tell the whole thing. So this one dude, who was like probably racked with dementia, on his deathbed, says, "No, George Washington was visited by aliens, and that's why all these things are. I know." Now he's dead.
And he's gone.
Yeah, it's gone. And so we have no way of checking on any of that shit because it's just recounted.
From the 1880s or whatever.
And I like, oh, do you know that the Washington Monument is points at the heavens where the aliens live? Like, mean, yeah, it's an obelisk.
Tops of buildings usually go, point up.
But there was one thing of like a lot of it was there's a statue of George Washington where he's like sculpted as though he's a Greek god. The painting at the top of the Capitol Rotunda depicts George Washington seated among the gods, and they were like, does this mean that George Washington was actually an alien who was a god? And I was like, no, it means George Washington was a fucking egomaniac, or the people who
viewed him as a god.
Who viewed him as a god, because like you can't, because obviously he's got to be a god if he's the first president. And that's why we probably shouldn't praise all these guys as though they were gods, because they were just human. But anyway, that's the whole thing. And I was like, that was really kind of meh.
Let us down, ancient aliens.
Come on, ancient aliens. Well, now I got no choice but to watch the one about cowboys and give you an update next week.
Oh, yes.
All right, so there we go. We've done our hour.
We have. Minutes.
I failed to rope you into watching jiu-jitsu with me.
No.
We did our update on the courtship and an update on ancient aliens. I think we're done, Kate. I think we've reached our quota.
Well, we have one important question to ask. Would you get the flick out of here? Or would you
I would absolutely not get the flick out of here.
I will not get the flick out of here because I feel as though other people should see this, but I won't re-flick. Like, I don't need to go back and watch this.
Oh, again. No. This is too depressing for me to watch it again.
This was one and done.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad I watched it. Like, I would not say, man, that was a waste of time. I'm not. Right. Like that's to me is like this was. If at any point during the watching of the film did I say I don't want to be watching this anymore,
right? Which is important because we watch a lot of wrestling that gives us no emotion. So it's nice to have something that makes us feel something.
Like, for example, 5 minutes into senior year, I was like, I don't want to be watching this anymore.
Yeah, that was not good.
So this was different in that way. And
I was definitely intrigued the whole time. Yeah.
Yes.
So we both keep the flick, but it's not like, I'm gonna watch it again and again.
Right. So anyway, so that's good. This is, again, it's not funny, stupid, bad, and weird.
It's just
it doesn't have to be all three of those things for us to review it. This one was just weird. It wasn't bad or stupid.
And niche. Like, there's people that I would not recommend this to.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. You have to be in the right frame of mind, and also, it is definitely niche. Anyway, so Kate, where can everybody find you who wants to find you?
You can find me at Miss Kate Fabe on Twitter by the time this goes up, probably, and also on TikTok by that name, and Katestagrams on the Instagram.
You can find me on the Twitter at Alex Sourgraps, and find us if you like wrestling.
You'll find us. From us.
You cannot get away from us on the Fightful channels, because we'll be talking about that literally every day of every day forever. It feels like every day it's getting closer. That's right.
Pick me up, love, from the bottom. Up on to the top, low, every day. He sounds like a DVD player that's skipping, Dave Matthews. Ain't no matter, don't are fancy. I'm gonna take my chances. I think we've done too many podcasts.
I think we have. Let's end this one before it gets out of hand. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
RESPECT. Click the subscribe button and find out what it means to me. Nah, that doesn't have a ring to it. But if you like videos about real news stories that are funny, stupid, or weird, subscribe now.